Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated legacy action. Today for our midweek meta deck slot we are playing Yuki Kubo's Eternal Weekend Asia winning deck list. So this is like one of the biggest legacy tournaments in Asia this year, and this is the deck that won it, which is quite an unusual deck to see win a tournament like this. But what's more interesting is that this particular build has got a lot of innovation, considering this deck is kind of a known quantity and doesn't have a lot of wiggle room. So if you're unfamiliar with Oops All spells, essentially we're trying to cast one of these 8 creatures, either Undercity Informer or Balustrade Spy, target ourselves, which will mill our whole library, putting Narcomoebas into the graveyard, which then jump out, which then sacrifice to the Dread Return, bringing back Thassa's Oracle, and boom, we win the game. So that means we're not allowed to play lands in the configuration of this deck, so we have a lot of cards that are mana. So we've got the 8 lands here in the black-green colours. That are spells on the front side, so we get these to start off our chains, things like Dark Ritual or whatever. We have 4 Chrome Moxes and 4 Lotus Petals for more starting mana. Sometimes you don't see this many Chrome Moxes in builds. This has got more starting mana, which is really interesting to me. We have the Spirit Guides, we have triple Cabal Ritual and 4 Dark Ritual, because we need to get up to 4 mana is the sort of crunch number. Now what I think is really interesting about this build is instead of running things like Summoner's Pact, which you would normally see, which can go and get you your Spirit Guide or a Wild Cantor to transfer your green mana to black mana. We just don't have any of that in here. What we have instead is a couple of Once Upon a Time, which makes quite a lot of sense to us, I think. It lets us get creatures, so we can get obviously our big payoff spells. It also lets us find things like the Spirit Guides as mana. But when we're just trying to look for these guys explicitly, that makes sense. And also, this is a card that we can realistically cast if things are going a bit awry for us. But what is really fascinating is there's no Thoughtseize in this build. Instead of playing Thoughtseize, this list is running 4 Leyline of Sanctity, which makes a lot of sense in a world where blue-black scam is everywhere. And Discard is going to pick you apart. This is just having a nice little main deck slot here, whereas normally you see this in the sideboard and the Thoughtseize is in the main, so kind of swapped over. There's also 2 Leyline of Anticipation just to really jam it in people turn 0. So we're going to be trying to win as many games as possible on turn 0 or turn 1. And that is what this deck does. I've played it on the channel a few times. This build has got quite a lot of different stuff going on. It's only a 60 card build, so it doesn't have the extra Reanimate or Memory's Journey that you sometimes see in these builds. So yeah, there's a lot to like here. I think having the additional Chrome Moxes for more starting mana is interesting as well. And we have double Dread Return. So if we have a Dread Return on our opener, we can happily put that under a Chrome Mox and not worry about the other one, because there's going to be one in there. So that's kind of interesting. It means that there's going to be some hands where normally you'd have to throw them back maybe because you don't have the way of getting the Dread Return out of your hand. Like let's say you have a hand with Cabal Therapy and Dread Return, that's fine now. The Cabal Therapy is also there just for the last little check of your opponent's hand, or to discard your Oracle or Dread Return if they're in your hand. And yeah, that's pretty much the deck. Sideboard wise, here are the Reanimates that I mentioned before. Now, we can actually use these for our opponent's creatures sometimes, if that's going to be a useful thing to do. But we can also use these as another way of getting our Thassa's Oracle going. So we can mill ourselves and then just reanimate it. You know, or if our opponent goes to exile some of our, like, Narcomoebas or whatever, in response to the trigger, then we have Reanimate so we can do stuff with if we have one available. So there's a little bit of flexibility there. Thoughtseize, like I mentioned, if we need to poke a hole in our opponent's hand rather than protect our own hand with Leyline of Sanctity. We've got some Xantid Swarms and Veil of Summers, so we're going against counter spells. Force of Vigor for things like Leyline, and a couple of Charbelchers. If our opponent's just going to be hating on our graveyard, we can pivot into this. Normally you would see Charbelchers packaged in decks like this with Lines Like Diamonds, so you can go off the turn you play this more often. But in theory, when we play this, our opponent's not going to expect it. So we might be able to have a turn to wait and do this. And we just have Pact of Negation to protect things as well. So yeah, this is Yuki Kubo's deck that won the Asian Eternal Weekend that was hosted in Japan, I believe. So let's just bundle right in and have a look at it and see how it plays. I'm excited to see the innovations and see how they pay off. Remember to like and subscribe, and let's go. If you're looking to play Legacy on MTGO like me, why not try Card Hoarder? They're a rental service that I personally use, and I found them better than other rental services that I've used in the past. So why not give them a try? Alright, our opening hand for game 1 does not have access to one of our creatures, so we can do better. Let's mulligan. Okay, so we can play an Undercity Informer on turn 1 and then turn 2 pop it. Our opponent's going first as well, so our Leyline is going to work here. I think we get rid of the Balustrade Spy here. Wait, no, we still can't play this as a land, right, can we? So we just need one more mana to go here. Let's put this into play. So we can play this as a spell, but not as a land. So we don't get to go off just yet. Our opponent knows we're obviously doing something a bit broken. Let's play this and pay 3 life. If our opponent cracks their fetch land or does anything, then we can activate in response. Interesting. Let's cast this. There is our Undercity Informer. Let's target ourselves. Put our Narcomoebas into play. Alright, we got the win there. That was pretty exciting. Prismatic Vista isn't a lot of information to go on, which is, in my opinion, the downside of this deck in a lot of ways is sideboarding can be a touch difficult because you don't necessarily know what your opponent is bringing in to try and beat you, because you don't get to see what their deck is a lot of the time, and if you try and Cabal Therapy them, they quite often concede the game. So, Prismatic Vista. That is generally a card you see in sort of slower control your decks, like Jeskai, Blue-White, X control decks. That's kind of what I'm thinking, but there are certainly builds of some combo decks that play it. I've seen it in Blue-Green Omnishow, so I think we're going to be boarding around counter spells more than anything here. So I think we're going to want the Veils and the Swarms. Do want these Thoughtseizes instead of Ley Lines. I think that's probably going to be better, because our opponent's going to have free counter magic to play with. So have a couple of Thoughtseizes. I think we can probably trim a Dread Return here for another Thoughtseize. And I don't think Bridge from Below is necessary here. I think we can trim that for another Thoughtseize. And just have quite a lot of interaction with our opponent. Maybe too much, you could argue. But hopefully we'll get a better idea. But we can always just like Windmill Slam our opponent anyway. This hand is like 2 mana. We do have the Xantid Swarm, which is quite a nice start. But we have 2 cards we don't even want. This is already a multiply, so I think we might as well go low and try and get something a bit spicier. This certainly counts as being spicier, doesn't it? We can keep this. What are we throwing back here? Maybe it's one of the Balustrade Spies. I think that's fine. Alright. So we do have the ability to combo, but our opponent's going to have something to say about it. Alright, there's a basic island. I would like some mana here. Alright, this is pretty good. Let's play this out. Do we go for it and back up with a Veil of Summer? Or do we see if our Veil of Summer gets counterspelled first? That's an interesting query, isn't it? I think we lead off with a Veil of Summer here. Alright, we're just in, aren't we? Alright. Let's cast our friend here. And we're done. Alright. Pretty quick match win there. The protection from the Veil was pretty good there too. And is a lot quicker than something like a Xantid Swarm, but does require more initial mana. But then again, like I said at the top, our build here has more initial starting mana than regular sort of builds of the Wild Canters and stuff like that. Although, yes, you can count Summoner's Pact in the regular builds as starting mana, but it's only mana for when you're going off on that turn due to the Pact clause. Anyway, 1-0, let's go to round 2. Alright, we're on the play for round 2. Our opening hand doesn't have access to the creature, so we are going to mulligan it. We need to have our combo pieces. Alright, this is a turn 1 kill with our hand here, so I'm going to keep it. We can throw the Bridge from Below back into the deck, or we can put it underneath the Chrome Mox. Right, we have a fan of the channel, so I have to apologise in advance because this might not be pretty. So this goes up to 3, 4, 5, and then we do this. Alright. Let's play this, pay 3 life. Play this. Our opponent is F6'd over there. And ourselves, they're not going to show us their deck. They're not going to show us their hand when we try and Cabal Therapy them. Where is our Cabal Therapy here? Target them, sack one of these guys. They should scoop in response to the Cabal Therapy so we don't get to see their hand. Endurance, I guess. Alright, our opponent scoops so we don't get to see their hand. Sure. Okay, I don't know anything about what our opponent's doing. So, in that situation, I think I quite like the Leyline of Anticipation here. I think I'm kind of into Charbelcher because I don't really know what our opponent's doing, and Charbelcher is just good against Graveyard Hate that our opponent could be bringing in, which is the most common way that people try to fight this deck. The way they F6 made me think they're not running counterspells, so I'm expecting more along the lines of either discard or graveyard hate is the things that are going to beat us. So obviously, Leyline of Sanctity good against graveyard hate. Do we want to try and run a couple of Thoughtseizes? Or a couple of Force of Vigors as like a nice little catch-all? That's a tough call, I think. Right, I'm going to run a couple of Force of Vigors in case of Leyline. I don't know, I've got a feeling in my bones. This hand is not very good. I think we have to mulligan this. What does this hand do? This is a turn 1 kill, which is kind of what I'm here for. But if our opponent's got any action, then it's going to be pretty good against us here. I think we still keep a turn 1 here, and we throw away a Narcomoeba. I guess I'll put one Leyline to play. We won't bother with the second one. This gives us, like, if there's like an Archon of Cruelty or something that comes into play and takes out our, makes us discard a card, we can kind of ignore that. Oh, we don't have the black mana starting black mana, do we? Alright, so we play this, pay through life. This is 3 mana, 4, 5, 6. That's one shy of activating Charbelcher. So I think we're supposed to, we obviously can't cast the Dark Ritual yet, but I think we're supposed to hold off. Probably weren't supposed to pay 3 life into our Turntimber Serpentine Grove either, but it's going to make our opponent think about stuff. We're just going to get Reanimated here. So I think Reanimate is usually on Fairy Macabre as their graveyard hate of choice, because they can obviously remove their own stuff as well. A Doughty Voidwalker. Alright, we have that covered if we find a black source here. That's not a black source. Alright, let's see if we're going to be punished for that 3 life we took earlier. Doughty Voidwalker, pretty good against our strategy, but that's why we brought in the Charbelcher. We can do it at instant speed if we need to. So if our opponent tries to make us discard, this doesn't actually matter. It means that we can't draw the black land, but we can still draw Lotus Petal or Chrome Mox, and that still gets us there. Pact of Negation. Alright, that's not the one. Him to Turek. This is an awkward one for us. We can't cast any of our spells. Let's just hope we get lucky here. They took one of the Dark Rituals. Okay. That does set us back. Fair amount. What was the other card that went? The Bridge from Below, right? Yeah, okay. Yeah, we take 5 here. We're going to draw the black mana now and it's too late, aren't we? Once Upon a Time. Can't cast... Actually, we can cast that. We haven't cast any spells yet this game, right? I'll take this Elvish Spirit Guide. Just need to find a little bit more mana. Lightning Bolt. Alright, we have one more draw step. Unless our opponent's got another Lightning Bolt. Alright, that also does it. So we would have had one more draw step if we didn't pay life into our... oh, I accidentally revealed my hand there. Whoops. We weren't getting there anyway. So they've shown us hand disruption type elements. So I'm down for things like Leyline of Sanctity. I don't think we need Leyline of Anticipation on the play. Force of Vigor, I don't think that's where I want to be either. I feel this selection of stuff is fine as is. There's an argument for Thoughtseize here, but I think we're just going to ball into it like this. Do I want a Thoughtseize? No. Sure, we'll just submit like this. 1 mana and then nothing else. This is a straight up mulligan. 1 mana. That doesn't really go anywhere. So we can make 3 mana on turn 1, but we don't have any guys, so this is a mulligan, I think, as well. What does this opening hand do? Protect us. Then we have land. We have 2 mana. So Dark Ritual. Do we go to 4? I don't think we can go to 4. I think we have to keep this. And I think we get rid of the... Do I think our opponent's going to be running Pithing Needles? I guess we keep the Informer, right? So we get rid of the Spy and the Pact. I think we're supposed to board the Pact out here. Our opponent's showing us 2 colours. I'm not expecting land destruction in the form of wastelands from them. Now, we could definitely get punished if they have that. But they've got black spells and they're playing red mana. It feels like a lot to be playing Lightning Bolt, to be playing Wasteland alongside. But I can live with that. Bridge from Below. That's not the one, but it's Chrome Mox food. Okay. So we need to find a little bit more mana. I'm more inclined to try the Charbelcher route than the Undercity Informer. Alright, so this is 3 mana, 4 mana. So we can go for our combo right now. But we're not under pressure. Our opponent can't hand disrupt us. They can't lightning bolt us or anything either. An Orcish Bowmasters, this will have to ping themselves. This is not a sizable enough clock for me to be worried right now. I imagine our opponent's got some hand disruption, but I'm thinking they're probably banking on something like a Fairy Macabre or a Surgical Extraction, that sort of jam. So I want to kind of avoid those if possible, and that's what the Charbelcher will do for us. Now if we can find a Thoughtseize and check the way first. Magus of the Moon, that is a slight problem. Alright. That is definitely punishing us for not going last turn. But the fact that their hand hasn't really done much makes me think that they must have had something there. Alright, we find a black source again. We've only got 8 in the deck that are viable black sources now, though. So that means like 1 in 8 cards should be a black source. So we are due to draw one of them. Right, this is just a guy to be down with. A Chrome Mox. So this is 1 mana, 2 mana, 3 mana, 4 mana, 5 mana. So we could just go for the Undercity Informer right now and go for that combo. But how much damage are we taking here? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have another draw step. So I'm going to take another draw step and then decide. Because I think the Charbelcher line is just going to be the safer way of killing our opponent. But if we have to go off next turn so that we don't die, then we'll try it. Yep, so we're going to take a little beating here. Technically, we have one more draw step. If they have another Bowmaster, then we don't. Or if they play a creature here. Ashiok. Spell abilities can't cause their controller to search their library. Okay, that doesn't actually impact us right now. So we might have another draw step here. But again, if they have Bowmasters, we do die. A Dread Return. Spells and abilities your opponent's control can't cause their controller to search their library. I think we've been painted into a corner now where we have to go for it. Do I think our opponent has Surgical Extraction? We could chance one more draw step. I don't think that's the correct thing to do. Let's bridge from below underneath this. Let's cast this guy. I guess we could block with this guy. But I think we just go for it here. I think we've been put in a position where we kind of have to do this. Feels like they have a Surgical though. The next card we were drawing would have been the Dark Ritual, I think. So we... Oh no, we casted Dark Ritual, didn't we? So... Oh yeah, there's another Dark Ritual. So it would have been another Dark Ritual. So if we'd have had another turn, we'd have been able to do the Charbelcher line. Right, there's a Surgical Extraction targeting the Narcomoeba. That will finish us off here. Yeah, that is game. So they did have the Surgical, so I was right to play around it. But, yeah, that was tough. I think... I don't know. I don't think we were supposed to go for it earlier. The way our opponent kept a hand, they didn't really do anything until turn 3. That's the only thing they did of note was the Magus. So they must have had something in hand. So I think I was right to play around it. Maybe I'm supposed to take the one more draw step and try and Charbelcher them out. Maybe that's what I'm supposed to do there. Like, we would have got there. But we had, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we had to find exactly Dark Ritual to go off was the thing. And there's only 3 of them left in our deck. So... the fact that it was the next card is a little bit annoying, but I think we are right to go there given the situation of the board. Alright, we're 1-1, let's go to round 3. If you'd like to support me in the channel, please check out my Patreon. It has a free guide to budget turbo depths as well as 3 tiers of support. A low cost one that enters you into my monthly raffle for a free donation deck on the channel, a mid-tier subscription that gives you access to my detailed turbo depths guide that is updated every month as well as regular articles, and lastly the higher tier gives you all of the above as well as a monthly donation deck for my channel. If you're interested in supporting the channel this way, please check out the link in the description. Alright. We don't have any starting black mana for this hand. And we have the Thassa's Oracles. I think I'm going to mulligan this. This doesn't have any mana to speak of either, so we're going to have to throw this one back. Still no starting black mana. How many starting pieces of black mana do we have? 4, 8, 12? So we're kind of odds on to draw one. If we go to 4 cards, like we do win on 4 cards relatively often. I think we should just take it. Yuck, that's bad. Okay. Can we do 3 cards? Sure, I'll keep these 3. We're exposed to a wasteland here. Maybe we're not supposed to play that. But if we find a land, we want to be able to put the Undercity Informer into play. Yikes. Also having this land in play and mulliganing this deep lets our opponent know that we're up to no good. Right, our opponent has played Den of the Bugbear and a Chrome Mox, which leads me to believe there's some sort of prison style deck. So we might be looking at a Chalice on 1 here, which will shut down Dark Ritual, which is our best draw. Alright, a Chalice for 0, that's going to shut off our Lotus Petal. An Unlicensed Hearse. Yeah, this is a lot to overcome. It's doable, but it's a lot. Chrome Mox and Lotus Petal, that's not going to get there. So we need to find our black mana land, and we need to find a Dark Ritual. How are we going to go about beating this Unlicensed Hearse? That is another question. I think our opponent plays a threat. We're probably just going to scoop up after 1 draw step. That is a threat. It's not the most pressing of threats. I think we're probably done here, though. Yeah, I don't know how we're supposed to beat all of these things they have. Alright, let's just go to post board. I would like these 3 Force of Vigors. We do not need Leylines of Sanctity at all. So have the Force of Vigors. Do you think our opponent's running something that's going to make us want a Charbelcher in our deck? Maybe. I think we can take out 1 Dread Return for a Charbelcher. I'm not convinced the Charbelchers are great because they cost so much mana to do stuff with. But it doesn't hurt having them around, I don't think. Or do we want some Thoughtseizes? This is the other option here. Pact of Negation, where is that? That can go out for Thoughtseizes. Alright, that's a much happier looking deck now. Not having the Memories Journey in this list does make it play out slightly differently, because when you go for it, you don't really have a safety valve to like chuck some stuff back in your deck and keep going. So you could do lines where you put like Lotus Petal and Reanimate back into your deck. Or like Lotus Petal, Thassa's Oracle. So you just have a win loaded in your deck, ready to go when you get there. We don't have that luxury with this particular build. But I do like a lot of the other stuff this build is doing. Like I think 4 Chrome Moxes to make sure you have more starting black mana is handy. And I think that is often going to be better than the Summoning Pact for Wild Cantor to convert your mana, because that's a lot of resources you have to get going. Whereas Chrome Mox just requires any black card. Anyway, we're on the play. Let's see how we do. 1 mana. Put this in it. 2 mana, 3. Okay, yeah. This goes on turn 1. Unless they put a Leyline of the Void into play. They mulligan to 6 card. If they're on Unlicensed Hearse, they're less likely to have Leyline of the Void. Right now, our opponent might just be chasing Leylines, which isn't a bad way to be. We also can't do... we can't do plays with like a bunch of Bridge from Below triggers and shuffle some stuff in with the Memories Journey. Right, here's our Chrome Mox. This is spell number 1. I'm going to print this Undercity Informer. Get the Undercity Informer into play. Sacrifice the Undercity Informer. So we can Cabal Therapy our opponent first, because of the Bridge from Below will give us another token. So we can do that first to see if our opponent's got Mindbreak Trap, because we've only played 2 spells so far. Like if they've got Fairy Macabre, that's going to get us anyway, but we can actually play around the Mindbreak Trap. Okay, Fairy Macabre, exiling Dread Return and Thassa's Oracle. So we can't win the game now, right? Yeah, alright. That was a very quick crushing, unfortunately. Yeah, our build is a little bit less resilient to stuff like that, unfortunately. Yeah, we don't really have an option to play around that unless we wait till we hit Thoughtseize, but that's a super dangerous prospect against a Red Prison deck because they can just shut you out of all the good spells. Alright, we're 1 and 2, sadly. Let's go to round 4 already. Alright, our opening hand for round 4. This doesn't get us our creature into play on turn 1, so we're going to mulligan it. This Once Upon a Time doesn't find us black mana. Where is our Zombie Spirit Guide? That's what I want to know. This does have some nice protection in it, but I think we're on the draw, actually, aren't we? So maybe we could keep this one. But Once Upon a Time is not great here. It finds us our guides, but we have the guides. It's the mana we're looking for. It can find us some Spirit Guides, but it's not going to find us it's not going to find us an initial black source. I think we're supposed to mulligan. This doesn't have the creature. A lot of other trash. Let's go to 4. Yikes. This is all the mana we could hope for, though. I think this is keeping this 4 is better. Right, so we keep 2 Dark Rituals and a Lotus Petal. So we get rid of a Mox, get rid of a Lotus Petal, and we'll get rid of 1 Dark Ritual. Alright. Need a little bit of help here. Thassa's Oracle. You are not a lot of help. I'm not going to play this out into Wasteland. I'm just going to pass. Because whilst we have 2 starting mana sources, we can pay our first Dark Ritual round of days, and then we can follow up with another one. Alright. Collector Oof. Alright, that's pretty good. Shuts off some of our mana. We can get around that as it stands, but not right now. The old main deck Collector Oof, not even Green Sun Zenith. There's the Wasteland that we're playing around. Grist. Yep. And the beats start coming. Right, I got Life from the Loam in the graveyard as well. They mill with a Grist, which is pretty nice for them. Once Upon a Time. We haven't cast any creatures yet. Any spells yet. Go on then. Let's see if we can find one of our friends. We cannot find one of our friends. I'll take an Elvish Spirit Guide. We can certainly play around days now. And we've got through more cards. So we've actually gone through an additional 4 cards on top of that. So what? 48 cards left in our library. So statistically speaking, we should have found one of our guys by now. So any minute now, I'm sure. Right, so they've shown us Force of Will is a card in their deck, which is not amazing for us. Black and colourless. Nope, it's going to be green and colourless for a Life from the Loam. It is. Sure, they're getting a couple of fetch lands back just to secure their land drops for the next couple of turns. They're going to bash away at us for like 4 damage, I think. No, only 3 damage. The reason they got 2 insects is because Grist milled over another Grist. Yep, Beanstalk, the Bug Beans deck. Not one of the creatures. Alright, I guess we get a clean up and we can discard the Thassa's Oracle at least. So we don't have to target ourselves with the Cabal Therapy. Now our opponent might have Endurance in their deck because they are a Yorion deck, so they can squeeze those extra cards in. The Gitrog Monster. Pretty cool. Big fan of seeing that guy in play. They're going to be drawing some amount of cards. They can wasteland themselves, targeting their own wastelands to do more stuff with their land. If you're unfamiliar with this card, let's just hover over it for you. So you get an additional land on each of your turns. Whenever 1 or more land cards are put into your graveyard from anywhere, you draw a card. So fetch lands draw you cards, wastelands draw you cards. Pretty cool. And it draws a card on its own when you have Up the Beanstalk in play. And, you know, it's also a big 6/6 Death Toucher, so it puts in a real shift. How many creatures they have in their graveyard right now? Just 2 for the purposes of Grist. So we are needing to find our little friend. I get something convoked out here. Ah, Hogak. Hogak Beans. Interesting. Makes sense with Grist. Yeah, our opponent's deck looks pretty sweet. A Leyline of Sanctity, you say. I'll play out a Lotus Petal. We have another Dread Return. Maybe we're supposed to hold on to... We're supposed to just hold on to this Lotus Petal and discard a Dread Return. So this is us dead on the next... This is 8 plus 6. Yeah, plenty damage. Alright. Yeah, not liking this matchup very much. Veil of Summer and Xantid Swarm are both somewhat useful here. Pact of Negation is protecting our turn is fine. If we're just trying to go off on turn 1, we don't really need ley lines. Do we want any cover for Graveyard Hate? I think so. A couple of Belchers, probably the best we have for that. I don't think our opponent's going to be a leyline deck, but we can hedge with the Belcher. Alright, let's try this. No starting black mana. That's mulligan. We can try and find the creature and then go. I think it's not going to get much better than that, is it? That's 5 looks. Take a free look at the top 5 cards. That's bad news for us. Alright, we're in a similar boat to the previous game, actually. Okay. So... things not looking great for us. We need one of the lads. Okay, we found one of the lads. Do I think we have time to wait and play around? If they play a Collector Roof, they're unlikely to play a Collector Roof next turn. But they could play a Collector Roof the turn after. Because they probably only have 1 Collector Roof and a Green Sun Zenith. So I think I'll take... I guess what do we do? So we go Lotus Petal, Simian Spirit Guide. That's Cabal Therapy mana. Sorry, Cabal Ritual mana, then Spirit Guide. I don't think we have a choice. I think we have to jam, right? Because we're going to need 2 draw steps to find anything to get us out of this. I guess we could find a Pact of Negation on our next turn. Sure. I think I'm willing to take 1 draw to find a Pact of Negation because our opponent's not going to have nothing over there. Like, you don't keep a 7-card hand against oops or spells unless you have some interaction. So I think we go to our next turn, try and draw the Pact of Negation. But if we have to go off, we have to go off. That's simply the nature of things. Volrath Stronghold. No blue mana over there yet. Interesting. Okay, so we have the Pact of Negation. So we played to our outs there. Now we have to see if it is an out. Let's cast this, exiling a Spirit Guide. And tapping this for black. This is a Force of Will target. Alright. Oh, our opponent's got Hedron Crab. I'm going to Pact of Negation their Force of Will. Alright, we're in. I didn't even wait to see the guy. Okay. Oh, I was very rewarded for my play there, I thought. So we just saw counter spells. We didn't see much in the way of graveyard hate. Am I on or off these Charbelchers? They don't feel like good cards. We could trim a Dread Return for like a Thoughtseize. Do I want to have 2 Charbelchers? Let's try 2 Thoughtseizes, 1 Charbelcher. And then I know it's in there somewhere. We could go down the Leyline of Anticipation line, but the thing we're trying to beat are counter spells, so I think we're better off not going that route. Alright, my Magic Online crashed, but we are still in sideboarding, so let's submit and go ahead. Yeah, made some changes here. So we want the Leyline of Sanctity out, the Leyline of Anticipation out. We want the anti-counterspell stuff in. We want 2 Thoughtseizes in. We want 1 Dread Return out. 1 Charbelcher in. I think our opponent got kicked from the game as well, so it's probably just a Magic Online just crashing for everyone. What does our hand do here? We can make a turn 1 Xantid Swarm. And then we just need 2 mana, which is the most abundant thing in our deck. I think I'm down for this. It's a little bit slow, but it has a lot of protection. Our opponent's not going to keep a hand that doesn't have some interaction. Wouldn't mind drawing a green card here. Not a green card. Understood. Play Chrome Mox. Let's imprint this Veil and deploy this. I don't think they're going to have much in the way of creature removal. So I think the Xantid Swarm is going to be better than a Veil. It also takes up some of our mana to cast. So we can... I don't really want to do anything with the Cabal Therapy in case we draw the Thassa's Oracle. So I don't really want to put the Cabal Therapy underneath the Chrome Mox. But we have a lot of protection, we just need mana here. So up the Beanstalk, yep, our opponent's getting some cards going, getting their engine ticking away. What have we got for our turn? Agadeem's Awakening. Is this better under a Chrome Mox? So we're either playing around Wasteland or we're playing around... Alright, let's attack with our guy first and get the trigger. So our opponent can't cast spells. So we're either playing around Wasteland or we're playing around Collect Roof. I think we play around a bit of each by having 1 Chrome Mox and 1 of these. Yes, I would like to pay 3 life. Let's Thoughtseize our opponent here. Surgical Extraction is the one that goes here because that's the one that interacts with our plan. Okay. They can Orcish Bowmasters and kill our Xantid Swarm. Probably going to do Brainstorm first. So if we can find a piece of mana, we might be alright here. There's Snowcold Forest. There's the Bowmasters. Goodbye, little Xantid Swarm. Dark Ritual? Not a Dark Ritual. A Bridge from Below. I don't think we're in the market for doing that right yet. We could Cabal Therapy our opponent right now, but they didn't fetch last turn. If we don't do it now, we're going to do it next turn. I think if they have a Force of Will, they'd probably would have been casting it at this point. Force of Will, please. Another Surgical Extraction. Okay. And an Endurance. That is a lot. I won't lie, that is a lot. Kind of need this Uro to go away. Or something. We need them to not have the green card for Endurance. We can beat one of these things. We can't beat them both. Well, if we draw like an Elvish Spirit Guide, we can use that as a creature to sack to the Cabal Therapy. A Murktide Regent. Okay. Things getting tough out there. Balustrade Spy. That's not the one, is it? So this is 6, 7, 8 damage. Alright, I think we pass. Our opponent's got 3 pieces of interaction in this game, and we've had 3 pieces of interaction, but one of them had to be a called shot, and we unfortunately failed on our called shot. So, could be in trouble here. It's classic Euro decks though, where 8-card decks, but they always have it. Unless you're the one playing it. No, the Euro decks are good. There's so much redundancy they have. Like, they've got Surge Extractions and they've got Endurances. So they've got plenty of graveyard hate. So we have... Alright, so they've cast a Ponder and chose not to shuffle, and now they're casting another Ponder, which is probably going to shuffle. No, it chose not to shuffle again. Okay, Dryad Arbor. We have one more draw step. A Dark Ritual. Does that change anything here? Gives us more mana. The problem is we know they have Endurance and Surgical Extraction, and we can't beat both of them. We could play a Balustrade Spy out, which blocks here, and we take 1, 2, 3 damage. That feels terrible though. If we play out a Balustrade Spy, mill ourselves, they will probably just Endurance in response. That doesn't really get us anywhere. Right, I think we are definitely dead on the next turn here. I don't think there's any single draw. I guess if we drew... No, because we'd have to use the Dark Ritual, wouldn't we? Is the problem here. I'm going to say, if we drew a... So if we use the Dark Ritual to power out the Balustrade Spy, next turn... Yeah, we have to go for it now and hope our opponent makes a mistake, which is not a good way of winning games of Magic the Gathering. Let me tell you. See what I want to do about this. I think I've just pitched Endurance right now. Surgical Extraction targeting Narcomoeba. So this is where if we have Memory's Journey on our deck, we would be able to counter this by just throwing this back in, and then we can win the game. So we definitely don't win if this happens. So we have to Pact of Negation this and hope our opponent doesn't want to use their Endurance for some reason. Yeah, it's unfortunate our opponent's things lined up the way they did. Like, they had the Bowmasters to ping our guy as well. Oh, they drew a Fairy Macabre as well. Yeah, we're not beating... So effectively they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces of interaction. That's a lot for us to beat there. Yikes. Yeah, we're 1 and 3. Not having a great time today. One more round. Let's see if we can get the 2-3 and get some play points back. Alright, we're into the final round. We have no starting black mana, so we're mulliganing again. Okay. What does this hand do? This is a turn 1 kill with in their upkeep. Wait, no, it's not a turn 1 kill because we need to put this card underneath it. But any mana source wins us the game. Sure, I think that means we keep and we get rid of this Narcomoeba. And I guess we're putting these two. I don't think we need to put them both up, do we? I'm just thinking about if we want to put one under a Chrome Mox. So we need to find any black's card, really. Yeah, okay, fine. Well, we'll have them both. Let's see if that makes our opponent scared. They might think we're playing the Leylines deck and assume that and not realise we're actually playing a better combo deck. A Windswept Heath. Alright, this could be like a Mavericky depth style deck, which is going to be relatively fair compared to what we're doing, so we should have a significant edge in this matchup. So if this Balustrade Spy was the Undercity Informer, we could play it at their end step. Steplings. Wowzers, trousers. Not seen a Steplings for a long time. Alright. Wow, Steplings. Alright, so we can just go now. They can't Endurance us either. Right, Dark Ritual. Dark Ritual. Balustrade Spy. A green-white deck that's actually a blue deck. Let's mill ourselves and find out. We'll tell you to this. Let's see if they let us Cabal Therapy them. Right, our opponents scoop in because they want us to Cabal Therapy them to see their hand. Alright. So, green-white. That usually makes me think that our opponent is running things like Endurance. Now, they could have some graveyard hate. Aside from that, like Surgicals. But again, we're in that spot where we don't really know what our opponent's doing. Which makes things somewhat awkward. I don't think we're a Pact of Negation plan here. So let's bring in a couple of Charbelchers and a couple of Force of Vigors, just in case. Try that. We'll leave the ley lines in because we might be able to kill our opponent in their upkeep on turn 1 before they get to play any spells. This protects against endurance and kills on turn 1, so I think we keep this one. We can put the Cabal Ritual underneath this, use Dark Ritual here, and Spirit Guide can go under Chrome Mox if we want to. Yeah, this hand seems fine. We have some protection. No leyline from our opponents, that's reassuring. Flagstones, we're going to see a Deafening Silence here. We are going to see a Deafening Silence, understood. We did board in some Force of Vigors. A Goblin Charbelcher, you say? I do like a Goblin Charbelcher, but that makes our rituals very difficult to fire off here, doesn't it? Right, so we'll play this Chrome Mox, and we'll imprint the Cabal Ritual. So we're down to 1 spell a turn here. 1 non-creature spell, at least. Okay. Step Links. There's probably some new card in our opponent's deck that's making them play this, which is pretty cool. Right, we're going to play out another Chrome Mox. So a Spirit Guide or something like that gives us the potential to make a Charbelcher next turn. So they can play another Flagstones here and get a bunch of landfall triggers. Or they can just play a fetch land, which is also pretty good. Give them some beating potential. Also, if we draw a Force of Vigor, we can just smash this Deafening Silence away. Alright, Step Link's coming in for big damages. Kind of brave you playing a 0/1 creature in the old world of Bowmarters. I guess you can try and mitigate it with fetch lands and stuff a little bit, so you let the first trigger resolve and then get the second one as like a protection against Bowmasters being flashed in. Alright, what have you got, opponents? You got follow-up threat? No, he's got some open mana there. A Thassa's Oracle. So we can cast that ritual into Balustrade Spy, but then we lose the game because we don't have anything like a Memory's Journey to shuffle stuff in. So I guess we're passing until we find another mana source, and then we put the Charbelcher on the stack. Alright, they're pumping their Step Links. Bash us for 2 here. They've got to have something like Knight of the Reliquary in their deck. That would make some sense. I'm expecting to see this turn. Red mana. Okay. Oh no, you're going to melt us down. Oh, don't do it. Oh no, they did it. Yikes. That's pretty terrible news for us. But I'm going to keep playing this game because I want to see as much of our opponent's deck as I can so we get more information sideboarding wise. Right, so they're playing a Flagstones, which is going to pump their guy, which is going to then kill their Flagstones and get another trigger. Once upon a time, the Legend rule used to kill both copies. So what you used to be able to do is play Flagstones and then play another one. They'd both die and get you 2 more triggers. So you get 3 triggers in 1 turn for your Step Links. That was a very long time ago. Right, we're going to take 4 here. I wouldn't mind finding something like a Cabal Therapy and a Black Land just so we can have a look at our opponent's deck. Or their hand, sorry, in case there's any other surprises out there. Please play an Endurance. At least tell me you have it in your deck. They do have an Endurance. Okay, good. Can't target us because of our ley line. So they got 3 to 7 damage this turn, probably. Right, fetch lands. This is going to be pumping their Step Links by a bit more. They've got a crop rotation. They do have a crop rotation. Are they going to kill us this turn? Like, power to them. Killing people with Step Links in 2023. I'm here for it. Even if I'm the unfortunate soul who's getting killed by it. It's still fun to see. So they get another fetch land here. They crack them both. And then they pump the Step Links up to... Well, they only need to pump it once. They can pump it twice and kill us with extra measure. Which, again, I love to see. Kaboom. Okay, so we don't want ley lines on the play. I wouldn't mind having another Force of Vigor. I think Thoughtseizes are going to be interesting here as well. Pact of Negation for Endurance is interesting. But if we have the Charbelcher thing, I'm not wholly convinced by this Once Upon a Time. Having actually played it, it's feeling a little bit less good. And we'll trim a Dread Return. I think this is acceptable. We can play an Undercity Informer on turn 1. That's good enough. And then we could also play and crack an Undercity Informer on turn 2 if that's more of our speed. Opponent's mulligan to 5 cards. So I'd love to find some sort of Thoughtseize action. Question is, are we supposed to play turn 1 Undercity Informer? Or are we supposed to hold back our mana and play a turn 2 Undercity Informer with the ability to crack it? That might be the correct line here. Because that doesn't expose us to removal. This plays into Wasteland a little bit more. But we can still just make an Undercity Informer on turn 2. And they basically just reset the game to turn 0. Once upon a time, let's see what they find. At least we'll know one of the things we're playing around. An Endurance. Okay. I hope you haven't got any green cards there, opponent. Agadeem Hellhound. Alright, our opponent is very much into their theme. Thassa's Oracle, you say? That's not a great one, is it? Let's exile the Simian Spirit Guide and play an Undercity Informer. This can roadblock the Hellhound a little bit. We could try and force 2 of our opponent's cards out right now if we want to. Is that worth doing? Then we'll be looking for a ritual effect just to put our Undercity Informer on the stack, really. No, I don't think we want to do that. I think we're just going to have a 2-3 in play. Also, because we don't have Memory's Journey, we can't just do it at end step and then have the ability to not die to it. So, a little bit awkward. So this is going to be bigger than our Undercity Informer, so we're not going to be able to block this turn. Maybe we should have mulliganed more aggressively this hand. We'll take 4. Step links, okay. 3 cards left in our opponent's hand. A Narcomoeba. Don't really want a Narcomoeba in our hand. Right, we're going to go for the Undercity Informer here. Put some Narcomoeba triggers on the stack and see what our opponent wants to do about it. Because again, if we find mana, we can just go again next turn. Whereas last turn, it would have cost us our Spirit Guide to do that. And the Narcomoebas can potentially buy us a little bit of life if they need to. It's not really how I want to use them. But we've got Bridge from below, so it's not the worst. Right, they're evoking Brushfire Elemental. They've gone really hard into it. Let's just show you Brushfire Elemental. Landfall gets +2/+2. It's the 2 mana of this version of these guys, basically. Alright, so these go away. Our opponent's got 1 card. And they also exile our bridges. Which is not nothing. Our bridge, sorry, but... Alright, get no Narcomoebas. But if we find any mana next turn, we can just do the combo again and our opponent shouldn't have anything or is unlikely to have anything. If they play a land, then they could hard cast an Endurance. Probably about the best that they could do there. We do need to get rid of this Thassa's Oracle from our hand, which is, again, quite awkward. But if our opponent's running on empty, then maybe our Undercity Informer can block their naught ones. Alright. Thoughtseize. We can Thoughtseize ourselves next turn. That's probably the play here, isn't it? To get our Thassa's Oracle out. So we can Thoughtseize ourselves, get rid of the Thassa's Oracle, and then mill our library. Edge of Autumn. Okay. Opponent's deck's like a throwback to a long time ago. Nice to see people doing weird stuff. There's a plateau. They're going to pump their guys. If they have a crop rotation, they're beating us anyway. Because they probably have Paducah Bog in their deck if they have a crop rotation. Now, if we get blown out by something like a Prismatic Ending, that'd be pretty... Okay, they're just cycling Edge of Autumns. Interesting. That's certainly on the annoying front. I think we are supposed to block here. They got a crop rotation, they're going to blow us out pretty hard. But they can't actually because of Deafening Silence, right? They can't blow us out with that. Okay. So we can Turntimber Symbiosis this and then do our plan like we were hoping for anyway. So I think we Thoughtseize targeting ourselves. Actually, we don't have to do that now, do we? We can do that next turn. Sure. We can also Thoughtseize. No, we won't have the creatures of the Cabal Therapy, will we? We just need to not draw a Narcomoeba on the next turn. Which I wish I hadn't said now, because that's definitely going to be what happens. Alright, so these are going to be pumped to 8 power guy. 8 power coming in. That's a lot. I'm not blocking here. Crop rotation kills us. But crop rotation would have killed us many times at this point, right? Because they probably have Paducah Bog in their deck. Interesting. They didn't go for the full damage spread there. Let's get rid of this. Tag ourselves with this. And then we'll Thoughtseize ourselves. Yes, please. Going to have my Narcomoeba. Draw return. Target Thassa's Oracle. Sacrifice these 3 guys. And victory! Alright, so we did get the 2-3 in the end. So we got some play points back. Let's talk about the deck. Alright, so this is the deck. It's changed the order that I had it in before because the Magic Online went down. But just quickly rearrange that, can't I? Alright, that's a bit clearer now. So this build, I think there were multiple times where I wish we had Memory's Journey in our deck today. And not having that definitely feels awkward for us. And we did face the problem that you always face when you play Oopsal spells, is starting black mana. It's not always the easiest to get. We've only got 12 sources. We've got Agadeem's Awakening over here, and then we've got these sources here. And that's it. That's all the starting black mana that we can materialize in this game. And we basically can't play the game without black mana. So we need that black mana to cast our rituals. That gets us up to being able to cast the big boy, the 3-4 mana guys, or like Cabal Ritual, and also it has a black pip in it. So we are desperate for these cards, and sometimes your opening hands are not going to get there, and you're going to have to mulligan a lot, and then you're going to be behind, and a single piece of interaction with the opponent is going to stop you. And that's kind of what happened in some of our rounds. Like the games we lost, as per usual, were the games you kind of lose to yourselves a bit. Although we did play against the was it the Bug player who had the Bowmasters for our Swarm? They had the first Surgical, they had the second Surgical, they had the Endurance as well. And I think they had Fairy Macabre or something as their final card. So they had a lot of stuff for us to try and beat. And realistically, because of those things have tacked on several different axes, we weren't really able to do anything about it. Like, we can stop an Endurance with a Leyline, but we can't stop Fairy Macabre and Surgical. And they have counter spells as well, so it's just never really going to work out for us. Which is kind of the downside of this deck sometimes. The wiggle room you have isn't enormous, because what we're trying to do is inherently, kind of broken and powerful, just trying to get those turn 1 wins and abusing a sort of deck building restriction to make these guys do all the work. That does mean that we are struggling a bit. And I don't think you could run something like Land Grant and a single Swamp, because if you hit that Swamp, your combo doesn't work, and then you lose the game. Even though getting a single Swamp in the deck that you could sort of access would be amazing, it would stop the deck from working, so that's not a thing we get to do. What we really need is Zombie Spirit Guide, right? To give us Zombie Spirit Guide, that was always the colour of fast mana once upon a time. Let's have one of those. As for this build versus other Oopsal spell builds, I think a lot of what it's done is trying to up the original black mana count by playing 4 Chrome Mox. Instead of the other builds that run Summoner's Pact and Wild Cantor to transmute green mana into... So your 8 green sources can get siphoned through a Wild Cantor into black sources. But obviously the downside of the Summoner's Pact is that you have to be able to do everything that turn. Summoner's Pact also does give you the options for tutoring for the Elemental, for Ruin Breaker I think it's called, for 2 mana, that blows up an artifact or enchantment. That is quite a useful thing to be able to board in. But I think my main problem with this list was, like, the black mana problems are going to exist whatever you do, and that's just the nature of the deck. And sometimes you'll get stuck by that and lose games, and sometimes you won't and you'll win Eternal Weekend in Japan, right? So, pretty good. However, I think the thing that actually got me here was Once Upon a Time is only good for finding these guys, really. Sometimes it can find you 1 mana plus 1 mana over here. But then, whichever side you're trying to do from it, like whether you're trying to find your creature or your mana creature, you've only got 8 of them that you're trying to hit in the deck. So, and that's like excluding if you already have like some mana guys and you're looking for like another one. So, I'm not convinced that this is actually that useful. Now, I can certainly see why it's useful. I think it might also bait you into keeping hands thinking that this is going to find you the thing you want, but it doesn't. So in my experience playing Turbo Depths, I know people have asked me repeatedly, why don't you play Once Upon a Time? And the simple answer is, for Turbo Depths, your deck only works if you are getting a 2020 into play. You basically don't win the game otherwise, apart from niche, like heavy sideboard matchups using things like Collector Reef or whatever. As a general rule, you only win by doing the one thing you're doing, which is exactly the same as this deck. This deck only wins by putting this into play, right? And Once Upon a Time, it doesn't guarantee that you can do that. Now, it has a bit of flexibility, but if your opening hand has got this, and you're looking for one of these creatures, and you keep it on the basis of this, and this doesn't find you anything, then you just lose. Now, we don't have other tutors we can play in the slot. It's not as if we have Demonic Tutor and Vampiric Tutor just lying around for us to tap into. But I think you will lose some... If you play this deck enough times, you will lose a non-zero amount of games for keeping a hand with Once Upon a Time that doesn't go anywhere. And I think the fact that it doesn't always... Like, it's unreliable at hitting the things you need is kind of a strike against it. Now, what are you supposed to run instead is a slightly more difficult question. Because, like, I think the whole Leyline of Sanctity, Leyline of Anticipation, this is just pre-boarding in a different way, right? So instead of having the Thoughtseize in the main, we've chucked those out and put the Leylines in play here so that we don't get jammed up by all the sort of scam decks running around and people with Thoughtseize and things like that, which makes perfect sense because we can go under them before they get to Thoughtseize us, or we can stop them from being able to Thoughtseize us. So I understand that, and obviously Pact of Negation, when you're going off on a turn on turn one, you know, it's one of the better cards you can have because it covers counter spells, it covers endurance, it covers whatever, right? The only thing it doesn't really hit is Fairy Macabre, but no one's got it in the main deck anyway, and you address the sideboard later. I think mainly with this deck, the things we lost to were just the things that this deck always loses to, right? Where your hands don't quite come together or your opponent has too many layers for you to get through. And that's just the nature of this deck. And sometimes that'll happen and you'll lose, and sometimes it won't and you'll win. In terms of the specific list, as I was saying, I'm not convinced by the Once Upon a Time. Obviously, this is just one league, and Yuki Kubo, who won the Eternal Weekend with it, they've obviously put a lot more games and work into this deck than I have. So I guess maybe over the course of enough games, this is actually going to show, and the amount of games you lose to it is going to be less than the amount of games you win to it, so maybe it pans out that way. Sometimes I even think that this deck might want to play some of the other spell lands that come into play tap. Yes, that is going to be awkward, but they are black cards that pitch to Chrome Mox, and they are black mana sources. Sure, it's delayed one turn, but sometimes you're delaying one turn anyway for some of this stuff. So I would be interested to try a build with some of the other lands. I'm trying to think what the best ones are, just in case you might ever want to cast them as a spell. I think there's one that's a 3-mana Duress effect, or a 3-mana Thoughtseize that's also a land. Like, obviously, it's not a good card, but we have to do some sort of wonky stuff to make this deck work sometimes. So that'd be something I'd be curious to try out in the 4 Chrome Mox build, just having a black thing to put on the Chrome Mox that can also be a land in a pinch, albeit with drawbacks. So I'm not saying it's the be all and end all, but I think that's going to come up and be useful more than Once Upon a Time, because in the, I don't know how many leagues I've played with this deck now, like 5 or 6 leagues, the consistent thing that it keeps losing to is, in terms of its own fail rate, is not having black mana and having to mulligan so aggressively to find black mana, and then like your whole hand falls apart and doesn't have enough stuff, or it's so easily picked apart by what your opponent's doing that their tiny little piece of interaction is enough to stop you. So maybe that's something you could try with this, but I think of official turn 1 combo decks that are trying to kill people on turn 1, I still think that Oops or Spells is probably the best dedicated turn 1 combo deck. But I think a lot of the decks that can win on turn 1 but tend to try and win on turn 2 or 3, I think are just stronger decks. So like the Epic Storm, for example. And I think the Riddler's actually very good as well. I think it's quite an underrated deck. But they have a little bit more reliability to play the game because of the way our deck has to be constructed due to the effects we're trying to utilize. There are limitations to our deck which do keep coming back to bite us when I play it. Like I've done, I don't think I've got any trophies with this deck yet, but I've 4-1'd, and I know there's a lot of people who do play this deck and trophy with it, and obviously it just won Eternal Weekend. So clearly the power level is very high, but the gap between the top end of playing with this deck and the lower end in terms of like how your draws and variants work is substantial. And I think that is something that puts people off this deck. However, this deck is like 140 ticks or something. It's very cheap, so it's definitely something you can jam a lot of games with and sort of fine tune. There is a mono black build that I haven't played for a while that I might try again, but not for a little while, because coming up very soon on the channel, we have Depthsember, which is where I play a whole bunch of weird and wonderful ways of playing Dark Depths, and we really go deep into the well of ideas, and that's going to be our theme for December, so I hope you're looking forward to that one. I'll still be doing midweek meta decks like this though, so it's not going to be all Dark Depths unless Dark Depths decks are winning big tournaments, then you'll see those on here as well. All right, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little exploration of someone making some sizable innovations to a deck that was more or less a 59 card solved thing in a lot of people's minds. So doing some different things and getting incredible results with it is really powerful. I think he ran the tournament completely as well. I think he was undefeated in the Swiss, I believe, and then won the top 8. So yeah, excellent run. And you can clearly see how powerful this deck is. We certainly had games where we just absolutely stomped people. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Remember to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out. And goodbye.